Welcome back to the Wolverine Confidential, your Michigan sports podcast. I'm Eli Zink, a producer here at MLive.
I'm Aaron McMann, Michigan football beat writer.
And I'm Andrew Kahn, Michigan basketball beat writer.
Guys, we made it through the weekend. It was a really exciting weekend. St. Patty's Day, Aaron and I spent a ton of time together going out and hitting every restaurant in town. Not bars, just restaurants, just food.
Yes.
I ate about 9,000 calories and then went home and went to bed. Andrew, you had a more interesting weekend than we did watching an amazing game.
Yeah, the luck was on the side of the Wolverines in Wichita there on Saturday night with Jordan Poole's, I called it a 28-footer to win the game. Just pretty unbelievable. I mean, it was right in front of me, which was really fun. And yeah, they're on to the Sweet 16.
Just absolutely wild in Wichita.
Yes, before we get to the game,
Wichita,
how was your weekend in Wichita?
It was good. Never been to Kansas, never been really to that part of the country. It was windy. My shuttle driver, they had a nice shuttle from the hotel to the arena, and he said March is the windiest month. He wanted to let me know that, don't be alarmed. This is normal for March. And then he said, but next month, that's when the tornadoes come. And I thought that's kind of strange. I mean, wouldn't April be the windiest month then?
Because of the tornadoes.
Because of the tornadoes,
like highly
naturally.
concentrated wind.
I guess he's saying just non-tornado winds March.
Got it.
But yeah, this guy, though, was very friendly, as was everyone at the hotel, the arena, the town. They were very excited to have this tournament there. And it will be interesting to see next week when I'm talking about my time in Los Angeles if it's similar, because I have a feeling it might not be. It might be like, what's going on here? Because there's 37 other things going on.
Right. But well, equally as beautiful, Wichita, notoriously as gorgeous as Los Angeles. So
yeah, it was warm. I think it was warmer there
destinations.
than it will be in LA. So
Yeah.
As far as temperature, yeah. Can't
Not
complain.
to bag on Wichita because I've never been to the Great Plains region, mainly because of the tornadoes.
I haven't either.
Ever since Wizard of Oz, just have not wanted to mess with tornadoes.
Fair.
So, all right, so we have the shot. We have, I had a good amount of swag on Saturday before the game, ingested swag. But the true owner of the swag this weekend was Jordan Poole. Amazing shot. Let's talk about the game.
Yeah.
We all saw it, and it was one of the most spectacular finishes I've ever seen for a Michigan basketball game. The Trey Burke shot, people kept comparing it to the Trey Burke shot, but that was different. There was more time on the clock. The buzzer was going, just unreal. The leg spread. Talk about what you saw when you were like courtside.
Yeah, Burke, I mean, they probably need that shot to beat Kansas, but the ball's in the air and time expires, and Michigan is losing. So if that ball doesn't go in, they're done. And you really saw, the ecstasy of victory and the agony of defeat. I mean, I saw it right there in front of me with, the pandemonium of Poole running crazy eights, getting chased by his teammates, and in the midst of that, Mo Wagner stopping and consoling a couple Houston players. Honestly, afterwards he's like, "They're seniors. That shot bounces out, and that's us on the floor." And to have that presence of mind to kind of realize that. He's always been a hyper-aware college basketball player. He knows, he kind of knows how fun the sport is, how many people are watching it, and just, he understands the just everything that goes into, the NCAA tournament and what it means. So it was a special moment. I mean, I saw that. Part of me thought, I bang out my story there, and I'm like, Jesus, once I get up from my seat, I half expected to have to step over a Houston player or two. I thought they might still be there because they were devastated.
No,
actually.
I can only imagine because and I felt the funny thing was as I was watching the game once there was the foul at the end, I started to leave. It was so late. I was like, okay, well, I think that's about it. Time for me to go. And I forgot my keys, so I came back in, and the commercial break had just ended. I was like, okay, well, I'll watch these free throws. Like, we'll see what happens. And he misses both, and I was like, I almost missed the entire sequence, which would have been poor decision on my part. But as you mentioned, Mo Wagner, the people's enemy, it seems like a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, more so with fans. I feel he gets under opponents' skin a little bit, but I don't think any more so than other big men. They're always battling, and it's a wrestling match down there. I don't think that he does anything particularly dirty or things like that. I think most of it is in good fun with his fans, with his teammates, positive energy.
But the fans, he showed a new side here.
But yeah, absolutely. They saw, compassion was the word you used, and that is the perfect word. It was fun to see. It really was. That was nice.
Now, we saw in the game that Michigan, again, didn't have a great start, and just throughout the game, their offense wasn't in sync. It looked almost like a completely different offense than we saw in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
So do these slow starts, are they an indication of teams scouting them really well and figuring them out, or is it that really long layoff from the Big Ten tournament?
The layoff didn't help. If you throw around the word rust, the players will say, yeah, that's probably part of it. I mean, they shot combined under 40% in those 2 games. And that's not good. That's usually not going to get you to the Sweet 16.
Right.
Yeah, Wagner was, he didn't take that many shots. There weren't that many opportunities for him. You know, teams know that you got to take him away, and they have. Now it's opened up some other things. Even for him, it opens up, you know, they start switching screens. You know, Wagner gets in the paint, posting up against a 6'4" guard. They got to take advantage of that matchup, and they just haven't. You know, the entry passes, that's a skill, and you know, posting up and making yourself available, that's a skill, and it's not high on the list for Michigan. So you know, Xavier Simpson was playing at such a high level, and he had some uncharacteristic turnovers, and he just wasn't sort of probing like he was in New York. Abdur-Rahman wasn't great. I mean, honestly, no one played that great. Matthews had a big game against Montana, and you know, Robinson came off the bench and hit some shots. But you know, other than that, there wasn't much offensively from Michigan. They've been a little out of sync. I expected them to be better against Houston in that second game in the arena, but it didn't really happen. We'll see now as they as they go to LA against another good defensive team in Texas A&M. So,
and as we saw, Texas A&M upsets North Carolina, and as we were talking about before the show, it's almost as if the seas are parting for Michigan. It looks like the road to the Final Four is achievable at this point. Obviously, Gonzaga could be a huge issue, but let's not overlook A&M, of course. What is it like in terms of what do you think the guys are thinking? Okay, we got A&M. They match up with us better than UNC probably does. We saw what happened earlier in the season. How do you think they're looking ahead to this game?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the bracket, I mean, I just get back to John Calipari of Kentucky saying how he was in such the group of death. You know, his region was so tough, and now he's the best seed remaining in his region. Michigan is the highest seed on the whole left side of the bracket.
Yeah.
I believe he proclaimed that they got screwed during the ESPN show after the bracket came out.
As he often does, and yet. Yeah, look how it's shaped out. So it's truly unbelievable. You got not just upsets, but you know, a 16 seed winning by 20 points, a 4-5 game that was 40 points at one point. Just these blowout victories and 20-point comebacks all over the place. But yeah, as far as Michigan, I think it's a good thing that Carolina is out. They would have liked, they were relishing that rematch. They wanted to show how much they'd improved since that game in Chapel Hill in November, and they had. But so had North Carolina. And the matchup just wasn't great because North Carolina's big, but they're also athletic. So, you know, their strength is a strength, and you think the flip side of that Michigan could exploit, they really can't. So they get A&M instead. I think that's better to have a team that's truly unfamiliar with them. But they're good too. They are very good defensively, like we said, and they run 6'9", 6'10", 6'10" along that front line. And they're all guys that can shoot threes. I think one of them is really a guy you got to really defend out there. The other two are, they'll pop one now and then, but still they're not just plodding bigs. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. They shot well against North Carolina, that's for sure.
And for a team that's never watched A&M and did watch that game,
yeah,
they probably thought, wow, how is A&M a 7 seed? I mean, they look amazing, hitting every shot they take, it felt like, and then North Carolina, they really handled North Carolina. But realistically, if you dive deep into the stats, this A&M team is a streaky offense. They go cold for quite a while. But so much of the tournament is who's playing hot.
Right.
And even though Michigan advanced to the Sweet 16, they're arguably not playing as well as A&M's playing right now, and that could be a big concern.
Right. Yeah. A&M is in the low 200s at 351 Division I schools and 3-point percentage, 3-point attempts. So that what did they shoot? They shot 10 for 24 against Carolina from 3. That was an aberration. But you're right, they're playing well, and Michigan is not. But they're not playing well offensively. You can't deny, Rob Gray, he got his points, 23, I think, something like that. But it took him 22 shots to get there.
An inefficient showing.
Yeah.
Which indicates they guarded him pretty well.
Pretty well. Yeah. Lost him a couple times. He hit a few threes, but we talked about Michigan under 40% from the field. Their opponents have been under 35%. So that's why they've advanced.
Right.
But yeah, they need to find they need to find a little bit better flow offensively, and it will not be easy against Texas A&M, which is a defense-first team, just like Michigan.
Not to get off topic, but you mentioned all the upsets over the weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously, we saw Maryland, Baltimore County. We saw Xavier go down Sunday night. Is there more parity now in college basketball than ever before?
That's a great
is
question,
that a top? I mean, is that something
Yeah, that's something that I feel we say this going into the tournament a lot.
Right.
It's what, but like a 1 seed loss to a 16.
And we've never seen that.
Actually had never happened.
Right.
As we
in
all
men's
know.
basketball. Yeah.
And they lost by 20 points.
Right.
Like it wasn't a last second shot. They crushed.
They crushed
UMBC
them from the start.
Was absolutely dominant.
The other one, Xavier is out. Cincinnati is out.
Yeah.
Michigan's
Yeah.
a 3.
And you would think there probably is more parity at this point, or and is it talent parity or is it scheme? That's what I'm wondering.
And I don't cover college basketball, obviously, but I find it fascinating. We've seen this implosion of these one and done kids, and then you've got some of these teams that are loaded with seniors or guys that have played together so well. And we've talked about this before, but in a tournament environment, anything can happen. It's one game and you're out. So you played poorly once and you're out. And I think you're starting to see this, in some ways, lack of experience or just lack of tournament experience maybe affecting some of these teams. I found it fascinating watching all these games all this weekend. I haven't watched a ton of college basketball all year long, but after the seeding and the placement of all these teams, and you see some of these big programs that are supposed to be in Virginia's instance, they were the #1 overall ranked team in the tournament, and they go down. So it's been really interesting weekend.
I always revisit my bracket. I just have to do that. Like, I should have seen this.
Yeah.
You can't. For this one, there was no strategy, there was no formula, there's no, if I'd gone with even what you mentioned, the veteran teams, well, there's examples where that hasn't proved.
Right.
There's, the offensive-minded team instead, because, there's no logic to some of this stuff.
Looking at all these bracket rankings, I wonder if the average bracket at this point is just significantly worse.
I think the whole left side of my bracket is just completely
I've got 3 Final Four teams left, and I'm proud of that, which isn't that much of an accomplishment after
that's
one
good.
weekend. I've lost a Final Four team and many Sweet 16s. That's not good.
Right. But
I'm
you still have
mentioning
3 for 4. That's honestly pretty good. I had State and Virginia in the finals, and that clearly did
same
not.
to me.
And these are teams that lost that didn't even make it out of the first weekend.
Right. That was another mindset is the preseason poll bracket. I don't know if you've heard, but it's kind of like those polls are more predictive than the final AP poll. Well, Michigan State was 2 or something like that. They're right up there, and they lose to a Syracuse team that
people say shouldn't have even made the tournament.
Correct. So it's it's been bonkers. It's been fun, and Michigan, of course, very fortunate to still beat one of those 16 remaining.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up basketball here, it's going to be a pretty crazy week. But say Michigan does get past A&M, what do you think is destiny? What's the future hold if they are able to?
I remember last week we talked, and I said that North Carolina game was going to be the toughest one for them. I mean, and the one where they were going to need that Jordan Poole moment. I mean, it happened a little earlier than I expected. So maybe now, they're. I think they'll beat Texas A&M, and I think they'll be favored against whoever they play next.
Which is crazy to think.
But Gonzaga is very good in a tough matchup, and Florida State is kind of a wild card. I mean, it's tough for me to have scouted all 68 teams before this tournament. Florida State was not a team I was thinking was going to be a matchup for Michigan, but
study
I'm
going
to see them in person on Thursday night. So they're the game right after Michigan, obviously, at Staples Center. So. Michigan will have whatever the nicest locker room is in the Staples Center. I don't know if it's the Lakers or the Clippers play there too, right?
Yeah.
They both play there.
They do. They do.
Whatever's the nicer, or the Kings maybe.
Los
Whatever's the
Angeles Kings
nicest locker room, that'll be Michigan's because they're the best seed. So that'll be nice. They had to defer to Kansas in Wichita.
I'd assume it's probably the Lakers locker room, but I don't know for sure either.
But honestly, if you got 3 pro teams there.
Probably,
they're probably all good.
Doing pretty well.
It's probably Florida State is going to be the one that gets
the
auxiliary number 4.
The away hockey.
The away hockey locker room, which is still probably better than what Montana was in Wichita. I mean, we're shuffling through trying to talk to guys. It was awkward, but it was. The bracket has opened up. The whole bracket, not just their region, the entire thing. Michigan fans, can start dreaming about San Antonio and start thinking about, okay, geez, Virginia's out. They seemed like a bad matchup.
Right.
And, they'd already beat Michigan State twice, but still they're one of the elite teams. They're out, and Purdue's got an injury now. Like, it's
been madness.
Wild. Yeah.
March Madness is a fitting name right now, but March Madness doesn't just fit Michigan basketball in the NCAA tournament right now. Kind of fits Michigan football in a way.
A little bit.
Considering that as we head into spring practice on Friday, there's still a lot up in the air. We've got a quarterback situation that isn't resolved. We have offensive tackles that still need to present themselves and show themselves a viable option. But then we got, how is the play calling even going to work? We don't even know that.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of madness. Can you talk about the big topics as we head into spring?
Yeah, like you mentioned, practice starts on Friday. They will practice every other day through the end of the month. Then they'll take the Easter weekend off, and they come back in April. The spring game is April 14th at Michigan Stadium. Don't have a time yet, but I'm going to assume it's early afternoon. And then they have 4 practices after that. So they've got 15 in total here coming up. Some programs have already started. Some programs started practicing in February. It's kind of up to the individual school and the program and the head coach.
And they have a finite number of practices that they're now drawing out over a period.
Yes.
Because I remember even, a few years ago, these practices were, it was 2 weeks, you practiced for 2 weeks straight, and then you had a spring game. And now they're drawn out. There's a trip to Europe. I mean, things are changing in the college football landscape in the spring a little bit, and it's making it a little more intriguing to watch and easier for the media to report on. It's more of a slow drip instead of a heavy rush.
And it probably works out better for the programs and the players itself. And instead of practicing, every day, maybe 3 days straight, or every day and then taking a break, it's drawn out. They're practicing basically every other day with a few breaks in between. So it gives the players an opportunity to rest and recuperate, and the coaches review maybe film or whatever they're looking at specifically.
Right.
So it's probably a better situation for all involved, in player safety and health and everything else.
Are they not practicing then on their trip this year?
That's still up in the air. There haven't been they haven't been giving us too many details on it at this point. They're still planning on going. It's still in the works. There are 4 practices scheduled after the spring game on April 14th. So I don't know if those are for the trip or not. That's still up in the air at this point. But they did practice last year, so I would assume so. But that's still up in the air. But like you mentioned, there's so many things to discuss. I mean, we've got the quarterback situation. Everyone wants to talk about. I'm still getting questions about Shea Patterson and whether or not he's going to be ruled eligible or not. It's still up in the air. From what I've been reading, and Shea Patterson's attorney has spoken to select media outlets at this point. They basically said that they're waiting on the NCAA. Everything's been submitted to the NCAA. Their packet, their argument for why he should be eligible to play. But now the NCAA takes that packet, goes to Ole Miss for their recommendation or what they feel like should happen. Once they get input from Ole Miss, then the NCAA gets together with their committee that's charged to make decisions like this, and then they make the decision. It's interesting, and I've said this countless times now, but should the NCAA decide to grant Shea Patterson eligibility in 2018, it's going to create an interesting precedent because there's several other Ole Miss players waiting to see what happens here. If Patterson is indeed ruled eligible, then they're going to say, well, they're going to have the same argument. We want to be eligible too. Then it opens a door for other football players, and then it goes to basketball too. There's all these other sports involved with this, and so it's an interesting situation the NCAA has. Obviously, Patterson has a case. NCAA is going to make the ruling. And then I think, and I've said this before, but I think that in some ways that could drive what Michigan does on offense. I mean, in a way, I think they're going to draw up their offense and design it around who the quarterback is. Because Shea Patterson's a different quarterback from Brandon Peters. He's got different, intangibles, different things he's better at. So it's going to be an interesting time. Obviously, people have asked me this, and I guess a lot of folks don't know this, but Patterson is eligible to practice. He can practice with the team. He's going through conditioning right now. He can do anything that all the other players are doing, and even if he's ruled ineligible, he can still practice. He can still go through everything. So at this point,
the difference is he going to take reps with the ones?
Right, exactly, and that's the situation. And I think that's going to be interesting to. And we're not privy to practice, so we can't see it. But that's something I'm curious to see, at least at the very early on.
And we'll get whispers of that once spring practice starts.
Hopefully, yeah.
Be a heck of a scout team quarterback, though.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of scout team quarterbacks, though, last year the buzz was all around Dylan McCaffrey as an excellent scout team quarterback. Granted, he's not running the offense. And that's sort of, that's really going to set guys apart is how well you know the offense. Now, ideally, with the dedicated receivers coach, Harbaugh saying he's going to pay more attention to the quarterbacks, let's play a quick hypothetical game. Say Patterson is not eligible, and people maybe assume it's going to be Peters, or maybe Spate if there is a return.
Yeah, there's so many things up in the air here.
So many things up there. Hypothetically, Spate transfers, Patterson's ineligible. It's between Peters and McCaffrey. Not a lot of buzz about McCaffrey. What could potentially happen there, and what have you heard?
Well, the word on McCaffrey is he's got the makings of being a very good quarterback. He's got a strong arm. His skill set is very good. He's a very smart kid. He's an honor student in Colorado high school, so he's smart. I think he gets it. He redshirted last year, so he's able to go through. He was able to familiarize himself with the playbook, familiarize himself with the offense, the coaching staff. He earned rave reviews from the scout. As being the scout team quarterback. Don Brown was praised him, I feel like, several times last season. So there's obviously a likability with him there, but the one downfall was his size. He's still skinny.
Doesn't have his man strength.
No, so I think they were trying to help him put some weight on. I don't know where that's at this point. I'd assume he's put on a few pounds, having gone through the college program and the weight training and everything else for a full season. But that was a knock against him. His stature wasn't visual and ready, I guess you could say. So I'm curious to see what he looks like coming out of the winter conditioning, and then where he is from there. I'd say, like you mentioned, playing the hypothetical, if Patterson is ruled ineligible, which is entirely possible, I think McCaffrey he'll be in there. He'll have an opportunity. I think he'll push Peters.
Is it too early to knock Peters? Yes, he didn't perform excellent last year, but he had moments, and he has talent. That's been clear from his high school film up to a few moments last season. Is it too early to write him off, as some fans certainly have?
Absolutely. He never really got that full season to be the guy last year, and that was the thing. Keep in mind, he started the year as the number 3 guy in the depth chart. He wasn't projected to play. He was kind of like an afterthought. And then you had Spate go down to injury. You had John O'Korn struggle, so he kind of got thrust into that spotlight. He started 4 games, looked good at times, struggled in others, but he never really got that. He was never handed the baton, so to speak, in spring practice or in fall camp and told, you're going to be the guy going forward. He got his opportunity late. I thought he looked good. Wasn't great. And keep in mind, too, there were so many other things working against him. The offensive line struggled in pass protection. The receivers were young and didn't do a very good job of getting open and running routes. I think you're going to see improvement with the receivers this year. From the Michigan standpoint, I think they're going to get improvement from the offensive line. I'd say there's nowhere to go but up with that group. So I think that by default is going to help the quarterback too.
And as you mentioned, Peters had receivers to throw to, had talented receivers to throw to, but no dedicated receivers coach outside a grad assistant. And as we go into this year, that's changed now. McElwain is going to take over for the receivers, and the whole dynamic should be a little bit different. Now, you mentioned Tariq Black's going to be back. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Historically, freshmen don't have great seasons across the board at receiver. Development between year 1 and 2 can often be significant. What do you think is going to happen? What should we look out for this spring as far as receivers?
Yeah, Peoples-Jones is interesting because I thought he'd get better as the season went on. I can remember in the Wisconsin game and then even the Ohio State game, there were moments where he looked almost like a veteran guy. He ran a good route, caught a good ball. I know there were some complaints in the Wisconsin game that he was getting held. I know Harbaugh voiced his opinion pretty heavily about that.
Right.
So he's obviously becoming a target from a defensive standpoint. Defenses are recognizing him as a potential threat, and I think that bodes well for Michigan going forward. You've got other guys, Nico Collins, Oliver Martin, who all we've heard have been really good things. I think they're primed for development. And then you've got returning guys. You've got Graham Perry, Kakoa Crawford, the guys that have been in the program several years now. They've gone through everything. In Perry's instance, he was the leading receiver all season. So I think he brings a veteran presence to that group. He can still catch a few balls, on the slant route and things like that. And so I think I'm ready to see the receivers make a huge jump. If you ask me right now, the group where I think has the potential to improve the most, it's the wide receivers.
Yeah, the dynamic should change entirely. Now, lastly, and just to wrap up, what are the other big storylines that we should look out for that we know we'll crack into on the podcast?
Yeah, the defensive side of the ball is relatively set, especially the line. I'm curious to see who fills the linebacker spot left open by Mike McCray. You've got a couple guys in there, Devin Gill, Josh Uche. So you've got, and then in the safety position too is another spot to watch. Michigan obviously boasts the #1 passing defense in the country last year. The quarterbacks were excellent in terms of advanced analytics. They graded out highly, but the safeties at times were struggled. We saw that in the Penn State game. You saw that in other instances. They get both their starters back. Tyree Cannell and Josh Metellus. I think they've learned a lot. I think they're primed for improvement, but Don Brown made it pretty evident
There's some guys knocking on the door.
Exactly, during Outback Bowl practice that there's going to be some competition there.
Right.
So I'm curious to see what happens there as well.
So a lot going on this week, both with football and basketball. Per usual, the storylines just keep coming. We'll be back next Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. And maybe looking for a trip to the Final Four when we get back. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you for joining us.
He's going all over the place, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've never been to San Antonio either, so.
And maybe you'll get there. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us, and we'll be back Monday.